300 kilometers per hour. Flat out at Suzuka. No braking. No lifting. No mistakes. And suddenly, the car loses over 60 kilometers per hour. In the middle of the fastest part of the track. This already happened. Today. During FP1 and FP2. And teams are starting to realize something terrifying. The new Formula 1 rules might not work. Because this isn't a failure. It's not damage. It's not driver error. It's the car running out of battery, completely. At full speed. With nothing the driver can do. And that creates something much worse than slow laps. It creates unpredictable cars. Massive speed differences. And moments that feel dangerous at over 300 kilometers per hour. But here's the part that changes everything. This problem is not fixable overnight. It's built into the regulations. Into how these cars were designed. Which means every team is now trapped with it. And what we saw today in Japan might just be the beginning. If you want to understand why engineers are panicking, and why drivers are already calling this artificial racing, subscribe now. Because the real reason behind this collapse is much bigger than anyone expected. At first, nobody reacted. Because what they were seeing didn't look dramatic. It looked small. Almost invisible. A slight drop on the straight. A moment where the car didn't feel as strong. Something you could easily blame on conditions. Wind. Track evolution. Setup. But then it happened again. And again. Different drivers. Different teams. Same exact issue. Losing speed when they should be at maximum power. And that's when engineers started paying attention. Because in Formula 1, there is one rule that never lies. If the car is flat out, it should accelerate. No exceptions. So when that rule breaks, something is very wrong. But here's where everything starts to shift. Because this wasn't random. It followed a pattern. Always in similar parts of the track. Always after high energy sections. Always when the driver was pushing the hardest. And that pattern is what exposed the real problem. Because the cars were not just losing performance. They were running out of energy. Completely. And when that happens, the system doesn't fade. It reacts. Aggressively. Instantly. The moment the battery hits its limit, the car switches behavior. From pushing forward, to pulling back. From giving power, to taking it away. And that transition is what shocked teams today. Because there is no warning. No gradual drop. No time to adapt. 1 second everything feels normal. The next, the car is slowing down, hard. Even with the throttle fully open. And this is the moment where drivers realized something critical. They are not fully in control anymore. Because this isn't about how they drive. It's about when the system decides to intervene. And that's a completely different kind of racing. But here's the detail that makes this even more serious. And almost nobody outside the paddock understands it yet. This problem builds up silently. Lap after lap. Corner after corner. Every time the driver accelerates, they are spending energy. And at Suzuka, they spend a lot of it. Fast corners. Continuous load. Very little braking. Which means almost no recovery. So by the time they reach the fastest sections, they are already on the edge. And they don't even know it. Until it's too late. And that's why today felt so shocking. Because when the drop happens, it doesn't feel like a small issue. It feels like something broke. But it didn't. This is exactly how the system is designed. And that's the moment where confusion turns into concern. Because if this is normal, then what we saw today is not an exception. It's the baseline. And if that's true, then every lap, every battle, every race, will be controlled by something the driver cannot fully predict. But here's where it starts to become a real problem. Because once you understand when this happens, you start to realize where it happens. And that location changes everything. And that location is what turns this from a problem into a crisis. Because it's not happening in slow corners. Not in braking zones. Not in places where drivers can manage it easily. It's happening in the fastest, most committed sections of the track. Places where lifting is not an option. Places where everything depends on stability, confidence, and full power. And Suzuka has one corner that exposes this perfectly. 130R. For years, this corner meant one thing. Commitment. You arrive at extreme speed. You trust the car. And you go flat out. No hesitation. No second thoughts. But today, that changed. Completely. Because now, drivers arrive there with a new question in their mind. Not about grip. Not about the line. About energy. Do I have enough battery, or not? And that question alone breaks everything. Because if the answer is no, the car doesn't just feel weaker. It slows down in the middle of the corner. Aggressively. Unnaturally. Exactly what we saw in today's data. cars entering at massive speed, and then suddenly dropping, losing over 60 kilometers per hour across that section. Not because of braking, not because of error, because the system takes over and starts recovering energy right when the driver needs it most. And think about what that means. At one of the fastest corners in Formula One, the car is no longer being pushed forward. It's being held back. That changes how drivers approach it. They hesitate. They adjust. Some even have to downshift in a corner that was always flat out. And that is something nobody expected to see. Because this is not just slower. It's different. Fundamentally different. The corner is no longer a test of bravery. It's a test of energy management, of timing, of calculation. And drivers feel it immediately. Because instead of focusing on the racing line, they are thinking about something invisible. Something they cannot see. Only feel when it's too late. But here's where it becomes even more serious. Because this doesn't just affect one driver at a time. It creates a chain reaction. One car hits this energy limit and slows down suddenly. Another car behind doesn't. Full power, full speed, and the difference between them becomes massive. In seconds, we're talking about gaps so big that they don't feel real. And the worst part? There is no warning, no signal, nothing to tell the driver behind what's about to happen. Just a car ahead that suddenly behaves like it hit an invisible barrier at extreme speed. And this is where people inside the paddock start using a word very carefully. Dangerous. Because in normal racing, speed differences are predictable. You see them. You react to them. Here, you don't. And that's what makes this so uncomfortable. But even that is not the part that's creating the biggest tension tonight. Because while drivers are trying to survive these moments, there's another system making everything even more unstable. And once you understand how overtaking now works with this problem, you start to see why this is no longer just a technical issue. It's something much bigger. And this is where everything completely unravels. Because Formula One didn't just change the cars. It changed how racing works. Overtaking used to be about timing, about pressure, about forcing a mistake. Now, it's about energy. And that sounds small, but it changes everything. Because with the new system, if you are close enough to the car in front, you get access to more power, more deployment, more speed. On paper, it's perfect. More overtakes, more action, more excitement. But what actually happens is something very different. Because the moment a driver activates that extra energy, the car becomes unstoppable on the straight. The overtake is easy, almost guaranteed. No real fight, no real defense, just pure speed difference. And for a second, it looks like the system works. But then, the consequence hits hard. Because that extra energy doesn't come for free. It drains the battery even faster. So the driver who just attacked becomes the next problem. On the very next straight, they are the ones running out. They are the ones losing speed. They are the ones suddenly vulnerable. And the car behind now has the advantage. Now has the energy. Now comes back instantly. So the position changes again and again and again. Not because of skill, not because of strategy, because of a cycle. A loop. An artificial pattern that drivers are already starting to hate. Some have even compared it to a video game. Not real racing. Something simulated. Predictable. Mechanical. And that frustration is growing fast. Because drivers feel like they are not fighting each other anymore. They are fighting the system. Managing energy. Avoiding certain moments. Delaying overtakes on purpose, just to not become the next car that slows down. And that creates hesitation. And hesitation kills racing. But here's the part that makes this even worse. Because it's not just about overtakes. It's about control. When drivers activate maximum deployment, the car itself changes. The balance shifts. Grip disappears from the front. The car starts to push wide. Understeer increases. And suddenly, the driver is not just attacking. They are correcting. Constantly. Fighting the steering. Trying to keep the car stable. While everything is happening at extreme speed. And now combine that with what we saw before. Energy dropping unpredictably. Cars slowing down without warning. Overtakes happening in cycles. Balance changing mid-corner. All at the same time. That's not just difficult. That's unstable. And teams are starting to realize something very uncomfortable. They don't fully control when these moments happen. Because once the battery reaches its limit, the system takes over. And when the system takes over, the driver adapts. Not the other way around. And that is completely against everything Formula One has been built on. But now, after what happened today, There's a bigger question spreading through the paddock. Quiet at first, but getting louder. What happens when this goes wrong in a race? Because practice gives you space, gives you time, gives you margin. The race takes all of that away. Cars close together, full aggression, no room to react. And if one car suddenly loses speed, right in the middle of a battle, at over 300 kilometers per hour, the outcome won't be small. And that's why tonight, behind closed doors, things are already moving. Discussions, concerns, possible changes. Because what we saw today was not just a flaw, it was a warning. And if nothing changes, what happens next? Could force Formula One to make a decision? It never expected to make this early.